So I've been teaching for 45 years, and there's certain kind of themes that keep arising with students, and practice is certainly one of them. So just wanted to make a couple points here, starting with the most important points. So the most important point actually is that you're having a good time. So if you're not having a good time and it's just another job, then that you're not going to continue to play. Probably it's just a matter of time before you just don't play much anymore. So that can be different for each person. We've all been around the block a few times, so we're familiar with what we stick with and what is fun for us. One thing to remember is you can change it up every day. For instance, I find that on certain days, I'm just hot. I can do no wrong. And that's a day to just play some songs because it's all right there. Other days could be the next day, even not so much, not so much. And then on a day like that, maybe it's a good day to work with figuring out key changes to get a song in my key. I'm not really playing songs very much because it's just not my day for that. Maybe I'm reading about ukuleles, building ukuleles, or reading about backgrounds of songs. What's important there is that you allot a certain amount of time every day to do something that's ukulele based. And I'll try to do that in a time of day that doesn't get impinged on by other responsibilities. So typically for me, that's the morning. It's after breakfast. I can get in 15 minutes or a half hour, and it happens every day. So, because if I put it off until the afternoon, a lot of times I don't get around to it, you know. So the main thing is that it happened, and we're just setting up ways to make it more probable that it will happen. So picking a topic for your practice that is enjoyable for you on that day, and knowing that can be different from one day to the next, really important. And then having a time of day every day where you can actually get in some time. That's really important, because if you do that every day, you're actually going to get better and you're going to notice it. If you only practice 15 minutes every 3 days, your progress is hardly going to be noticeable. Well, you kind of notice it, excuse me, but doing it every day, much better. So of course, it goes hand in hand with, thinking you want to have an hour to an hour and a half. Sometimes it's harder to find that every day. Yes, that would be nice, but if you set a goal for yourself that you can't actually do half the time, then you're looking at an hour to an hour and a half, 2 or 3 times a week. Not quite as good. I find at this stage my memory is not as sharp as it used to be, and so I've just learned to accept that, and I've come up with ways to kind of remember what I've done. I'm familiar with how long I can set aside a song before I start to forget it. So I play a lot of songs. For me, I need to play every song that I intend to repeat again later, that I want to keep in my memory. I need to do every song I know probably once every 6 weeks, something like that. Could be different for you, but it's important that you're acquainted with what that is for you, because there's nothing quite as frustrating as going to play a song that you used to be quite good at and realizing that you're only about half as good as you used to be, because you've lost your chops in musicians' terms. So be familiar with what that is for yourself. And memory-wise, something that's really important, like if you're looking at a YouTube video, or you picked up something from my lessons here, or you've been playing something with friends that you really liked, the best time to play that song again is later that day, while it's still fresh in your mind. The idea is you want to get it in your muscle memory by repetition. So the worst thing to do is to see something you really like and then wait 5 days before you practice it again, because it'll, like, half of it's just gone. So you want to just kind of get it in to your muscle memory. You can do 2 or 3 days in a row where you're just working on the new thing. Then you could probably skip a day and then it'd be no big deal. But if you skip days right away, wow, then it's just kind of gone. So another thing that I see quite often is that people don't really have a really good idea of what would take way more time to learn and what would not. And so they'll choose songs because they like them, but they won't realize it's going to take 4 times as long to learn that song. So here's a little rule of thumb for you. Most of you know quite a few chords now, and you have some playing styles in your right hand, different strumming styles and picking styles. An example of a song that would be the easiest for you to learn would be a song that has no new chords in it and no new strums in it. So if you're wanting something that's going to be something you can do within a week or 2, pick a song that doesn't have any new chords in it and doesn't have anything new for your right hand to do. You're going to be able to pick that up a lot faster. The next level of challenge would be maybe there's 1 new chord in there, but everything else you already know. You know all the other chords, you know the right hand style you're going to do, you already know how to do that. So that is going to be something that might take, instead of 2 weeks, it might take 3 weeks, but still it's going to be pretty fast. Things that are going to take a little longer are going to be like if it's an entirely different right hand style. Just to give you an example, if you were to pick up a song that had an entirely different right hand style, but had all chords that you already knew, so you didn't have to learn anything new in your left hand, and you played that song 10 minutes every day, you'd probably be able to play that song and sing it in about 2 months. Gasp. So this brings me to my next point, which is kind of a Zen point, and that is to practice accepting the way things unfold as real. Almost everyone that I've taught or met has expectations that are up here that have nothing to do with reality, which is down here. And then they get very, very frustrated, and some of them blame themselves, which I do not recommend, really. It's just the idea, when you think of it, your ideas about how long something should take to learn, total fiction. It's just something you picked out of the sky. It's like, well, all right. Don't use that to beat yourself up, because that whole prediction has nothing to do with anything. Typically, you're learning a song new because you thought it would be cool to learn that song. But what was missing from that equation was a knowing of how long that's going to take to actually train your hands to do. So if you can just, like, for instance, when I first started learning, I took on some songs that were way beyond my abilities, and I eventually got them because I loved the song so much. I was going to do whatever it took to actually learn it. But it took so much longer than I thought. Now, I'm glad I did in hindsight, but I wish that I had known how to just accept what is. So persistence is the main thing in learning a new song, and then accepting how things are actually unfolding while you're learning the song. So just a brief recap on the easiest song to learn would be a song that has no new chords and no new strumming for your right hand. So you already know all that mechanical stuff. So then it's just a question of learning the words and the melody. The next most difficult song would be something, maybe one new chord, but otherwise it's all chords you know, and there's nothing new in your right hand to do. You know? And then the next more difficult one would be something that's got a couple new chords, you know. And then a little more difficult is going to be like new right hand style, but no new chords. And then the most difficult is going to be, yeah, you got 4 new chords, you got an entirely different right hand style, and that's going to be a test of your patience. Just know that, and if you just are persistent about it, you will get that song. But it gets a little tedious when it starts to unfold in a way that takes longer than you had wished. So one other point that I would make about practicing wisely, if you're getting a song for yourself to sing and play, you're not really doing it with a group, you're not doing it with PUG, you just it's just sung like. Take some time to figure out what key works for you. So Nancy demonstrated this quite well at the beginning of our session. The original key of Walk Right In does not really work for her voice. And you could hear that it was just really hard for her to do it in a higher key. So the first thing you want to do is play through the chords a little bit and find out, okay, what's the lowest note in the song and what's the highest note in the song? And how are you with those two extremes? So you can kind of look, if it's a long song, you can look actually at the notes in the book, or you can just sing through the song and find the lowest and the highest. And then you might figure that, okay, I've got to make it a little higher for me. Those low notes are a little too low. Now, the easiest way to do that is just this handy device, a capo, which just automatically raises everything. So if you play a G chord, but you're capoed on the 2nd fret, that's just going to be higher sounding, and you can sing a little higher, and you might just solve the problem that way. One of my students right now found that it was best for him to capo around the 4th or 5th fret. Well, the ukulele sounds pretty cool, you know, when you're capoed down that far. Especially if you want this really light, kind of airy sound. So going higher, because the song's too low, this might fit for people that have voices that are actually higher than the rest of us. So going lower, that's a little trickier. You're going to actually have to transpose the chords to other chords, which means you're going to be playing different shapes. The advantage with the capo is it's the same shapes. It's just capoed. So the easiest way to pop things down a key is to, like if you were in G and you wanted a lower key, you would just go to the previous letter in the alphabet. G becomes F, E7 becomes D7, A7 becomes G7. You're just going backwards in the alphabet, one letter. So sometimes when there's minor chords, it's a little trickier than that, but that's a way to kind of figure out what key is going to actually work for you, and then go about it that way. Now, if you have an app like Mimicopy, I use Mimicopy on my Apple products, M-I-M-I-C-O-P-Y. I can actually transpose the original song down to the key that I can sing it in, and I use that all the time. It's really great, even though it may sound strange if I transposed it 5 frets. The singer sounds quite odd, but I can sing along with them. So that's an important part of practicing wisely. Don't just take it right out of a book and practice it a bunch in that key. If you can't really sing in that key, find a key that works for you, and then start learning the song. About the only time I use the original key is when I'm listening to the original group and listening to kind of their timing or their rhythms, or maybe there's certain chords that were left out of the thing I got off the internet that I'll put in, or maybe the chords are over the wrong syllables in the words. I'll correct all that before I transpose it, so I can use the band to do that. Because sometimes there's mistakes, you know, in terms of, especially if the song is just words and chord names, you know. Um, you want to correct anything that might be mistaken there in terms of chords that might sound funny along with the original group, or might be in the wrong, over the wrong words or something like that. So we're just kind of setting it up so you don't teach yourself a version of the song that you later have to undo, right? You want to figure out, okay, first of all, is it these chords? I'll just sing along or play along. You wouldn't sing along, but you'd play along with the band and just see, okay, yeah, all those chords are in the right place and they are all the right names. Then you can transpose it into a key that you like, that works for your voice. So really, if you can just do those things, that's really going to streamline your practice. So we're doing a practice every day, even if it's like 15 minutes, that's way better than practicing for an hour every 3 days. You're just teaching your neurology how to do this thing. So it's just persistence, patience, learn to accept that what happens, what actually unfolds as you're learning a song is actually the way it works. That's what's happening.